Hi, welcome everybody. And let me try to advance my screen. Let me just share again. Sorry about that. Let's share. I'm just going to go actually out of slideshow mode so that this may be easier. But yes, thank you everybody for joining us this pre-Thanksgiving webinar. My name is Anna Leung. I'm one of the co-founders of Language Tree Online, and we develop a standards-based ELG curriculum for students in the middle and high school level. And I also want to introduce my co-presenter, David Noyes, who is a national board certified educator in English language development, and is also currently working in the field as a K-12 English language learner coach for the Long Beach Unified School District in California. And he has over 30 years of in-class experience working with English learners of all levels. So David, why don't you start the presentation?
All right, thanks for having me during this amazing giving thanks break. We wanted to just give you a little bit of background on kind of the impetus around the resources that we have for our ELD level 2s, our long-term English learners. And first and foremost was a lot of the resources that we developed over time were because of the increasing number of long-term English learners that we were seeing in not just the Long Beach Unified School District, but across the state of California and in many other states as well. So we had students that started their tenure in an English school, maybe in the elementary school venue, but actually remained long-term English learners into middle and high school. The impetus, or the other impetus around the development of these resources was we don't have a lot of standards-based resources that are content-driven, meaning content standards driven around language. So we wanted to start developing some of those resources for our secondary students that were also developmentally appropriate. Additionally, there are very few resources that develop advanced foundational literacy skills for our long-term English learners. And the research that we started looking at has shown us that many students that don't have those advanced foundational literacy skills intact are actually, it's very difficult for them to redesignate as fluent English proficiency speakers, readers, and writers. And then lastly, there's summative data out there that happens annually for our students, but the summative data doesn't really give a lot of feedback to our teachers around next steps or resources and interventions that they might provide those students from month to month, day to day, moment to moment. Additionally, formative data. What do we do when we have a student that hasn't really mastered a certain language skill? What sort of formative data can we get that helps us, again, with our teaching next steps? So I realize that there's just a couple of us here that, but I did want to kind of open the chat for asking you what types of formative and summative assessments you have for your secondary English learners, or that you're utilizing in your school or district, just to kind of get a feel for where you're at with all this stuff. You can go ahead and put that in the chat if you have anything. If not, we'll just kind of move through into the next slide, but we would love to hear your voice if you care to put anything there in the chat. All right, we'll hold off for just a second. Okay, so essentially the way we've developed the resources, we wanted to start with the backwards planning. We wanted to start with the end in mind. So we developed both entry and exit assessments that covered 3 distinct language areas. One was foundational literacy skills. The other one is collaborative listening and speaking. So some of those collaborative, interpretive, and productive modes are addressed in the not only the assessments, but also in the lessons that were created. Lastly, language function and construction, and that is really about kind of the engine of the language, how grammar, text structure, all of those things that that drive the language of English, or English in this context, specific skills that are either addressed or addressed or taught to in the lessons. So that's language function and construction. You'll notice that we have about the same number of questions in each area. The other thing is we wanted to make sure we had the fidelity in the results. So we, based on a single standard, language standard, we had 2 or 3 questions that address that standard. So the student has several opportunities to show us what they know around that language standard. And then lastly, 1 standard per question. So many of the summative data or the assessments that we looked at address multiple standards. We narrow down that question to 1 specific standard. So teachers are able to interpret the data and figure out next steps. This is, I realize this is a really busy slide, but we wanted to just show you how we broke up the lessons, the online activities, the interactive activities, as well as we call them downloadables or practice activities for students to, outside of the platform, or actually still on the platform, to practice those skills. We understand that our students need multiple opportunities to interact with the language. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that within the context of these lessons. The lessons themselves, you have the lesson titles on the far right, a lot of skills covered. For each section, we have the input, which is the lesson itself, the virtual professor. We have opportunities to practice. That's the activity or the online activity, as well as the downloadables. And that's another opportunity for students to apply those skills. So this is just an example of kind of the teaching routine. The virtual professor introduces the language skill, the lesson, the rationale, some modeling, and a little bit of practice. From there, the students move into the interactive exercise where they have a chance to apply that skill that they just learned. And what you'll see in many of these lessons, there's multiple parts because these language standards are dense. There might be 3 or 4 different lessons within the context of a single lesson. So you might see that virtual professor come up 3 or 4 times for each language skill that's practiced in the context of the bigger language standard, the interactive exercises, multiple opportunities, as well as the downloadable or the practice lesson where students actually go in and have another opportunity to practice. Within the context of level 2, is we really added what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that content was in the car with the language skills. So language is always the driver in these lessons, but content is also the passenger. So we wanted to have cross-cutting standards or integrated standards in math, science, and social studies. So to help students not only develop those language skills in those different content areas, but to help them understand that language lives in all of these different content areas. And if they're able to successfully unpack these language skills, that will bode much better in their academic progress around the content. So we really did want to drive that. And these lessons are rigorous. And they do challenge our secondary English learners, our long-term English learners. But again, for all the right reasons, because the content is not watered down in their other discipline courses, but we wanted to make sure that they understood where language lived within the context of the content. This is just another kind of showing you how we developed. This has to do with language function and construction, just showing you some really explicit examples. This is around text types. We're breaking down the different types of text using the virtual professor, the different topics, components, and from there, the students actually apply that in their using their interpretive skills, their reading, and maximizing their writing skills as well. So you'll see that kind of connected to every single lesson. So again, we just wanted to toss out another question for you. And around scaffold or focused instruction, what happens if our English learners require extra support? And that's going to happen with an online platform resource. So the students are navigating through the lesson, but they seem to be getting stuck. What happens? Where do we go from there as secondary teachers? I realize that it's difficult to provide small group instruction, but what sort of interventions can we provide for those students? So we just, again, we're just kind of offering up a little bit of feedback from the experts in the room is, what do you do around focused or scaffolded instruction when there's just certain students that might need that additional support? So we'll hold on the chat for a second and see if we have anything that pops up. All right. So one of the ways that we've, again, addressed the opportunity for more scaffolded or personalized instruction is by using, we call it this downloadable. And what we provide the teachers with is kind of a teaching routine that just reviews the skill, and it's connected to the information that's modeled online or given through the virtual professor. So we provide the teachers an opportunity to revisit some of those skills in all of the different areas: foundational, collaborative listening and speaking, and language function and construction, a downloadable lesson for every single one of the virtual lessons. As well as opportunities to practice. And that's where in level 2, we call it the practice assignment, because the students are actually able to do this online, but we really wanted to amplify opportunities for the students to write and to use some of that productive language and interpret the information yet again. These are a lot more scaffolded for the students that again might still need that extra practice. And this might be used as a homework assignment, something that maybe they've received some support from the virtual professor, some support from the teacher, and then the student is off and has another opportunity to apply the skill. So this is just we wanted to show you where we started and where we're ending up with ELDs level 1 and level 2. If you're not sure about what gaps your ELD level 2 students have, it's really important to understand that we might want to look into looking at the ELD level 1 skills just to see where these students are at. For ELD level 1, we provide these resources, the virtual professor, online lessons, and downloadables for the ELD level 1s for our students that are newcomers all the way up to about 2 years in the country. These lessons are highly scaffolded and focus on a lot of the conceptual design around the structure of the lessons. It's language-based, but we provide a lot of schema or background around middle and high school acculturation, functional vocabulary. It's different for level 2, whereas we're diving headlong into that integrated subject matter: social studies, math, and science. Both ELD level 1 and ELD level 2 offer online interactive activities, virtual professor, which we invite the teachers to teach along with. We don't want them to feel like they are secondary to what's happening to the instruction. In ELD level 2, we also have some opportunities to develop more oral language practice and for students to hear themselves reading and responding. So that's in that oral practice and recording in that second, or actually the third bullet. In ELD level 1, we actually have an extra component. It's called the American School component, school culture component. And within the context of that, we provide students with some background on what to expect in the middle and high school environment. And there's different chapters. It might be around school day and school resources, school personnel, holidays, school activities, and we build in some of that functional vocabulary along with that. And then lastly, we stay aligned with those downloadable instructional routines in level 1 and student activity sheets, as well as the downloadable instructional routines for level 2, much higher rigor with those online practice assignments.
Okay, Great. Thank you so much, David.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, please feel free to put those in chat. And then I'm going to go into the actual program. So I think David gave you a great overview of the components. And so we'll go straight into the online program so you can see that those things that David said in action. So just bear with me a little bit. So we have, let me log in. Share. Sorry, I'm gonna log into our program first. And okay, here we go. Okay, I hope everyone can see our screen. Okay, so I've already logged in as a teacher. So there are two views. There's the teacher view and there's also student view. They're both the same, except the teacher does have reporting and they also have the downloadable lesson plans. So let me just go in. As you can see, we have ELD1 and ELD2. And as we're talking about LTELs, they're really relevant for ELD2. So I'm going to go into the ELD2 and start with the assessment component, which I think David talked about previously. So again, there are three areas or buckets of language development skills. We have foundational literacy, collaborative listening and speaking, and language function and construction. So just to give you an example, I'm going to go into an assessment question for under foundational and kind of show you what we have. I've been going in here quite a bit. So for example, here's a question about our control vowels.
Listen to the word park. Choose the word or words below that have the same R sound.
Okay. And here is a second one. So again, like David said, we asked more than one question on each skill, just to make sure.
Listen to the word sticker. Choose the word or words below that have the same sound.
Okay, so there again are 28 questions, and we test all the skills under foundational literacy with multiple questions per skill. Let me take you to also the collaborative assessment. Just give you an example what's there and go back into that. So we're going to talk about a couple of collaborative skills, and one thing we do is we actually here's a passage.
The Amazon rainforest is a moist tropical rainforest that covers most of the Amazon basin of South America. This rainforest represents over half of the planet.
Okay, I won't go through the whole thing, but we show them a passage, and just to point out that we're very careful about providing equitable access to make sure that students understand both audio, through by audio and also by reading, that they understand what we're testing them on. So there's a question here.
Choose the question that is most relevant to the topic.
Around asking relevant questions based on what they've read. So we ask them to choose the right answer here. And then there's another question.
Which statement below paraphrases information from the presentation about the Amazon rainforest?
So you see here, we actually also ask them about paraphrasing to understand if they know what the concept of paraphrasing is. Okay. And let me go back and I'll show you the final one, which is from from language function construction. So let's go in here.
And Anna, I just wanted to add on to that. That's based on one of the standards, one of the listening and speaking standards. It's collaborative listening and speaking, but it's really about asking and answering questions, and also goes into paraphrasing and summarizing. So that's one of those really deep standards that there are actually multiple contexts to that single standard, multiple parts to it. So again, we created lessons that addressed all of the nuances of that standard, so which are several.
Okay, great. And this is language function construction, and I'll give you a couple examples of questions that ask about text structure. So I'll just give you example one. So So they're asked to read a passage and then ask about the purpose of the passage.
What is the purpose of the passage?
Right. And here's another one. So again, the content is very topical. So we're talking about electric cars. We give them a basic graphic organizer, and then we give them the content, and then we ask them the question.
What is the purpose of the passage?
So these are examples of assessment questions. And I just want to also show you how the assessment questions are correlated with the lesson. So if you do find there's a gap, right? So based on assessment and based on the reporting that you get, and I'll go into that with you, you see that a student has a gap in a particular language area. So for example, it would be R control vowels. So you go into then the actual lesson. So let's go into the lesson module. So this is the actual instruction of the skill. So let's go into foundational literacy, and we see here that these are all the skills that we actually instruct on, and we look at lesson 8, which is on R control vowels. So let's go in here, and you see here we have a chart
R
that reviews the R control vowels and their spelling. Then we also let them practice. Actually, there's actually a video required. I jumped right in. So this one is a video that talks about R control vowels.
Today we are going to learn about how vowel sounds can be changed when there is the letter R after it. These are called R-controlled vowels. Understanding how to read a word with an R-controlled vowel can help you read and pronounce the word correctly. Knowing the spelling patterns of the various R-controlled vowels will also help you spell words correctly. The first R-controlled vowel I'm going to introduce is the R sound. Say the sound with me. R. The R sound can be spelled with the letters AR, like in star, architect, and market. The letter R after the vowel A makes the R sound.
Okay, I think get the gist of that. So we have this video input from the virtual professor, and then I'll go back again. We have a review table, and then we have interactive exercises
Click on the audio button to hear the word. Select the correct spelling of the word.
Purple.
Okay, so then we also have them practice identifying the R-controlled vowels. Okay. So these are the lessons. So you can see that it goes from the assessment questions to the lesson, and we also have companion downloadables. So and these are teacher resources. So look under this, under downloadables. And again, they're all numbered. So you go into R control vowels. You see, you could download a PDF of a lesson plan that you can use synchronously with your students. So this can be used over Zoom. This can be used in the classroom. And this is what the teacher would go over with the students to kind of gain that formative assessment. In addition to that, students can also do their practice assignments. So these are kind of analogous to homework. They can go back into the program, and these are not graded, but they can go back to the program and practice what they learned. So let's go back into the ELD lesson modules. Okay, so under this lesson module, under foundational, we have all the lessons, and below all the lessons are the assignments. So these are practice assignments that students can do when at home or in the classroom with the teacher. So you look at the practice assignment for R control vowels, this is lesson 8. You can kind of see that the students can actually practice typing in the words. So in addition to understand the concept, they can actually practice writing and typing and actually applying the concepts. Okay. So we have a lot of these practice exercises for every single lesson. There are a corresponding practice exercise. Okay, and then finally, let's get into the reporting piece. So I'll get back into the assessment. So you're going to look into the ELD2 entry assessment, which is right here, and then go into grades. So this is the reporting section the teachers can use to see how the students are doing. So here, and of course, these are dummy accounts. You see the students score in each of these areas. So I'm just going to kind of scroll across. And so for each of the entry assessment areas, there's some scores. And this person didn't do so great in the collaborative listening and speaking section. So we're going to see what that student missed. So you can actually drill down and access the exact score for that student. So you could see that student, got 25 out of 100%. And how many times, when did they start and finish? And then on the right hand navigation, you can see the questions that they missed. So the ones that are highlighted in red are questions the student missed. And the ones obviously green check, the ones they got correct. So you can see where they had the problem, right? And maybe work with that student on that particular question or skill. Okay. So I think that's the end of my demo. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm also going to go back to the presentation and kind of leave up some information for you. Christy, do you want to maybe start the Q&A session?
Yeah, we did have some questions come in. I guess the first question was, are students able to go back to the lesson on their own to review it independently?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The student can, this is 24/7, anytime, anywhere. So they can log in through their school portal. We integrate with Clever and ClassLink. And anytime they want, they could go in and review the online lessons. They can practice on their own and so forth. So yes.
Okay, and then my students are all long-term ELs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little more about how your program might be utilized by a designated ELD teacher with long-term ELs?
I could go ahead and field that. So for those classes that are structured for a designated ELD opportunity, we provide the entry level assessment, which actually pinpoints where some of the gaps that the students are having. We also give the teacher gets enough data from that entry level assessment to figure out where that student might begin their virtual instruction. So for example, for some of our long-term English learners that are struggling with foundational literacy skills, or in this case, the advanced foundational literacy skills, they might be starting in that bucket of lessons or those lessons. So what the system works if the students are begin in that foundational skills lesson and they're not getting 90% or better, the system prompts them to go back in and keep trying and working on that skill. That works the same for the collaborative listening and speaking and the language function and construction. So there's a lot of flexibility in the program for that ELD teacher or that content teacher that's providing some integrated ELD opportunities. So students can be working in different areas at the same time while the teacher kind of monitors their progress. At that point, it does open up or provide flexibility for that teacher to provide some small group instruction as well with the help of those downloadable lessons. So it gives them kind of a teaching resource to use for those really small group opportunities that may take 10 to 15 minutes, but it's just an opportunity to check in with those students. So there's a lot of flexibility. We wanted to make sure that teachers were able to make those choices based on the needs of their students.
Okay, and then the next question, how do these language lessons benefit students in other core content classes such as science, math, and social science?
I'd like to address that if I can. That's a huge driver for our level 2, because what we wanted to make sure that we were the reason why we're integrating cross-curricular content into the language lessons is we want to make sure that language is not taught outside of content. So it shouldn't be, it shouldn't live in its own area. Language is in every content area. So we've really done our due diligence around connecting those prerequisite or requisite language skills that actually live in the content areas. And so one of the things that we try and point out in the lessons is to help the students understand how to unpack language as it exists or lives in the different content areas.
Thank you. And it looks like this is the last question. Will this program last me throughout the school year?
I can just go ahead and give you the data on that. If the program is used with fidelity, the question is absolutely. What we want to make sure we stay away from is just putting our students on an online platform and not monitoring or seeing their progress or making those instructional decisions based on what their gaps might be. So we really ask the teachers to use the program flexibly and with fidelity in order to maximize all of the resources that are actually in the program.
Excellent. And that's all the questions I see, but if anyone does have a question or you would like a quote or you want to speak with an educational representative or get a demo, please feel free to contact us at Studica. We'll be happy to help you. You can reach us at info@studica.com. or you can call us at the number on the screen. Again, I will be sending a follow-up email that will include the recording and some information. So if you do have any other questions, feel free to respond to me as well. And I just wanted to thank Anna and David today and all of you for joining us. So just a quick thing, if you have a second at the end of the webinar to complete the survey, we would really appreciate it. Otherwise, please have a very good day and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you, everybody.